Inventing the Future, a photobiography of Thomas Alva Edison, by Marfé Ferguson Delano. Genre: a biography is the story of a real person's life written by another person. Before you read, think about what you may already know about Thomas Edison. In 1868, Thomas Edison took a job in the Western Union Telegraph Office in Boston. He found the city an exciting place. Not only did it have a large telegraphic community, it was filled with inventors. One of them was Alexander Graham Bell, who, in 1876, would invent the telephone. Edison worked nights as a press operator and spent his days exploring the shops where telegraphs and other electrical devices were designed and made. Inspired by all the activity he found, Edison soon quit his job to focus full-time on bringing out inventions. He met with people who had money to invest and persuaded them to provide the funds he needed to develop his ideas and have his inventions made. He specialized in telegraphic devices, but he also worked on other inventions. When he was 22 years old, Edison received his first patent. It was for an electric vote recorder. A patent is an official document issued by the government that gives a person or company the sole right to make or sell an invention. Edison hoped the device would be used by state legislatures, but lawmakers were not interested in buying it. The experience taught him a valuable lesson. Never again would he invent something that people didn't want to buy. In 1869, Edison moved to New York City. Many telegraph companies, including Western Union, had their headquarters in the city, which brimmed with business opportunities for an ambitious young inventor. Edison worked for a while for the Law's Gold Indicator Company, where he repaired and improved the company's stock printers. Also called stock tickers because of the noise they made. Stock printers were a kind of telegraph that sent minute-by-minute reports of the changing price of gold to stockbrokers' offices. Anything that won't sell, I don't want to invent. Its sale is proof of utility, and utility is success. That fall, Edison started a business called Pope, Edison and Company, with a fellow inventor named Franklin Pope. They advertised themselves as electrical engineers who could devise electrical instruments and solve problems to order. The company offered a variety of services having to do with telegraph technology and was also committed to bringing out new devices, Edison's specialty. He patented a number of telegraphic improvements that were eagerly bought by the telegraph industry. Finally, he was inventing what people wanted and were willing to pay for. By the age of 23, Edison had earned a reputation as one of the best electrical inventors in the country, which helped him attract more financial backers. In 1870, his partnership with Pope broke up, and Edison opened his very own manufacturing company and laboratory in Newark, New Jersey. Edison hired more than 50 employees to make and sell his stock printers and other equipment and to assist with his many experiments. Among the skilled machinists and clockmakers he hired were Charles Batchelor and John Creusy. A British-born machinist and draftsman, Batchelor soon became Edison's right-hand man, as well as his friend. They worked closely together for nearly 25 years. Creusy, born in Switzerland and trained as a clockmaker, worked with Edison for 20-some years. In the fall of 1871, 24-year-old Edison started his own news service, the News Reporting Telegraph Company. Among the company's employees was a pretty 16-year-old clerk named Mary Stilwell, a Newark girl whose father worked in a sawmill. Edison set his sights on Mary, and after a brief courtship, they married on Christmas Day, 1871. When the couple's first child was born, a daughter named Marion, Edison nicknamed her Dot, after the telegraph signal. Their second child, Thomas Alva Jr., was dubbed Dash, of course. The Edison's third child was named and called William. Soon after their marriage, Mary discovered that she played second fiddle to her husband's true love, inventing. He often spent several days straight at the lab, working through the nights and catching naps on a workbench or desktop when exhaustion overwhelmed him. Whenever Edison was involved with a project, he became totally wrapped up in it. And since he almost always had dozens of inventions going at once, he had little time for anything else. In Newark, Edison first developed the method of team inventing that would characterize the rest of his career. Whenever a new idea for an invention inspired him, he sketched it out in a notebook and then shared the drawing with Batchelor and Crucy, or other trusted assistants. Their job was to take the sketch and see that it was made into a working model. Lab workers then experimented with the model to see how the invention worked, or did not work, which was often the case. Edison was not discouraged when things went wrong. He and his workers would just keep trying until they found out what did work. Edison's workers tended to be very loyal to the old man, as they called their young boss. They admired and respected him for the way he worked alongside them, plunging into the dirtiest jobs with enthusiasm and putting in longer hours than anyone else. Moreover, Edison could be generous. He often gave assistants who worked closely with him on an invention a percentage of the profits it made. Negative results are just what I want. They're just as valuable to me as positive results. I can never find the thing that does a job the best until I find the ones that don't do. Although Edison's Newark laboratory focused mainly on devices that improved the speed and efficiency of the telegraph, other electrical inventions were also under development. One of these was the electric pen, which could create multiple copies of a handwritten document. Business owners, from lawyers to mapmakers, immediately saw the value of the device, and it sold well. Although Edison manufactured and sold many of his inventions, he also sold the patents for many others. This gave the buyer the exclusive right to make and sell a device. Despite the income this generated, Edison was usually short of cash. That's because he tended to spend most of what he earned from one invention on the next. In 1876, Edison sold his Newark business. He moved his family and about 20 of his best workers, including Batchelor and Crucy. Edison, seated at center wearing a cap and scarf, and his muckers take a break in his Menlo Park invention factory. Among the projects he worked on there was an improved telephone transmitter. To find the material that would work best in it, Edison and crew experimented with more than 2,000 different substances, including rubber, ivory, tobacco leaf, and fish bladder. To a small farming village in New Jersey called Menlo Park, located about 20 miles from New York City. There he had a 2-story laboratory built to his design. Unlike most other labs of the time, which combined inventing with manufacturing, Edison's new laboratory was devoted exclusively to researching and developing his ideas. It contained well-equipped chemistry and electrical labs and a machine shop for making models of his inventions. Edison often referred to the place as his invention factory. He bragged that it would turn out a minor invention every 10 days and a big thing every 6 months or so. Edison and his muckers, as he fondly called his crew of fellow experimenters, lived up to the boast. Known as the chief mucker, Edison patented 75 different inventions in the first 2 years at Menlo Park. Among them was an improved version of Alexander Graham Bell's telephone. Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. The biggest problem with Bell's telephone was that the sound it transmitted or sent was weak. A caller had to shout into it in order to be heard on the other end of the line. Edison felt sure he could not only find a way to make the telephone sound louder and clearer, he also could make it send messages over longer distances. Eager to gain the advantage in the budding telephone industry, Western Union hired him to do just that. Edison knew that improving the transmitter, the device that converts the sound of a speaker's voice into electrical signals, was the key to better quality sound. The challenge was to find the material that would work best in it. In 1877, less than a year after Bell's invention of the telephone, Edison discovered that tiny pieces of carbon encased in a small container or button gave the best results. Called the carbon button transmitter, the invention not only produced excellent sound, but greatly increased the range of the telephone. A version of it is still used in most telephones today. I had the faculty of sleeping in a chair any time for a few minutes at a time. A taker of catnaps, since his days as a young telegrapher, Edison wasn't picky about where he nodded off. Here he snoozes atop a lab table in his West Orange laboratory in 1911. While he was working on the telephone, another sound-related idea occurred to Edison. If the human voice could travel over wires, he reasoned, then there should be a way to record the sound so that it could be listened to later. In November 1877, Edison gave a sketch of an invention he called the phonograph to John Crucy and asked him to build it. A few days later, Crucy had a model ready for testing. A simple machine, it consisted of a hand-cranked cylinder covered in tin foil, a mouthpiece with a metal disc called a diaphragm, and a needle. With his muckers gathered around him, Edison turned the handle of the machine while he shouted a nursery rhyme into the mouthpiece. As the sound waves of his voice vibrated the diaphragm, the attached needle scratched grooves in the foil. When he finished reciting, he rewound the cylinder, put the needle into the tracks it had made, and cranked the handle again. To everyone's surprise, the machine worked the very first time. Out of the phonograph came Edison's voice, faint but clear. Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. The excited experimenters stayed up all night recording themselves with the invention, which was the ancestor of modern CD players. The next morning, Edison took his brand-new baby to New York City and dazzled the editors of Scientific American magazine with a demonstration. Word of the amazing invention spread rapidly, and Edison became a celebrity overnight. The phonograph's ability to reproduce human speech seemed like a miracle. Newspaper headlines proclaimed him the inventor of the age and the wizard of Menlo Park. Edison, who enjoyed the attention the phonograph attracted, envisioned a variety of commercial uses for the device, including toys and dictation machines. He soon set it aside, however, to concentrate on the greatest challenge of his career, the development of an electric lighting system that could be used in homes and businesses. Electric lighting was not a new idea. Brightly burning lamps called arc lights, which glowed when a current of electricity jumped between two carbon rods, had already replaced gas street lamps in some large cities by the 1870s. But they were not suitable for home use. Not only, "This, the phonograph, is my baby, and I expect it to grow up to be a big feller and support me in my old age." Was their glare too intense for indoors? They were also smelly. So people still used candles, oil lamps, or gas lamps to light their homes after dark. Aware that other inventors were racing toward the same goal as he, Edison vowed to get there first. To gain the financial support he needed, he took a gamble. In September 1878, he announced to reporters that he was very close to developing a practical incandescent lamp, or light bulb. Not only that, he said he expected to have a safe, affordable electric lighting system ready to go in just 6 weeks. He was exaggerating his progress greatly, but so strong was his reputation at the time that few questioned his claim. Confident of Edison's genius, several rich investors established the Edison Electric Light Company to cover his expenses. Edison's gamble paid off. It was time for the real work to begin. The groundwork for the incandescent light bulb had been laid many years earlier by an English chemist named Sir Humphrey Davy. In 1802, Davy discovered that by passing an electric current through strips of metal, he could make them hot enough to glow brightly, or incandesce, for a few seconds before they burned up. The Menlo Park lab hummed with round-the-clock activity as Edison and his muckers, including several newly hired electrical experts, tackled the problem of the light bulb. Edison set some of his associates the task of finding a way to get all the air out of the glass bulb so that the material giving off the light, called the filament, would not burn up too quickly. Other workers tested more than 1,600 materials, including horsehair, coconut fibers, fish line, spider webs, and even the hair from John Crucy's beard, to find the best filament. Finally, his persistence was rewarded. In the fall of 1879, Edison and his muckers tested a piece of cotton sewing thread. First, they carbonized it by baking it until it charred and turned into carbon. Then they inserted the carbonized thread into the glass bulb, forced out the air with a special vacuum pump, and sealed the glass. When connected to an electric current, the bulb glowed steadily for more than 13 hours. Within a few weeks, the lab had produced an improved bulb that burned many hours longer. In late December 1879, Edison invited the public to Menlo Park to see his marvelous new invention. As visitors got off the train in the evening, they were astounded by the brightly shining electric street lamps lighting their way. Even more impressive was the laboratory, which one newspaper article described as brilliantly illuminated with 25 lamps. Over the next 2 years, Edison and his crew worked feverishly to invent the many other devices besides the light bulb that were needed to get a full lighting system up and running. At the top of the list was an efficient generator or dynamo to produce the electricity. They also developed wires and cables to deliver the electricity from the generators, which would be housed in central power stations, to streets and buildings. Sockets, switches, safety fuses, and lamp fixtures also had to be designed. Ever practical, Edison didn't forget to devise a meter to measure the amount of electricity that customers used, so they could be charged accordingly. His lighting would be cheap, yes, but not free. By 1882, Edison had set up the world's first commercially successful electric power station on Pearl Street in New York City. He and his family had moved to the city sometime earlier so that he could personally supervise the installation of his lighting system. On September 4th of that year, he was finally ready to deliver what he had promised 4 years earlier. Standing in the office of millionaire businessman J.P. Morgan, one of his investors, Edison flicked a switch, and current from the Pearl Street station lit the office lamps. By nightfall, some 24 buildings in the city's financial district glowed with Edison's electric lights. As crowds gathered in the streets to marvel at the latest magic from the Wizard of Menlo Park, his fame soared even higher. Edison devoted the next few years to improving his electrical system and spreading it around the country and the world. He set up numerous companies to handle the manufacturing and installation of his products and made millions of dollars. In 1887, Edison built the laboratory of his dreams. Located about a mile from Glenmont, it was the largest, best-equipped research facility in the world. 10 times bigger than Menlo Park. The main lab was 3 stories high and 250 feet long. Housed in separate buildings were a physics lab, a chemistry lab, and a metallurgical lab. In his new laboratory, Edison continued to improve his lighting system. Edison's West Orange lab also contributed to the birth of the motion picture industry. Around 1889, Edison and a team of muckers, led by William K. L. Dixon, started work on an instrument which does for the eye what the phonograph does for the ear. In a few years, they had invented a movie camera called a kinetograph and a peephole machine called a kinetoscope for watching the movies. To make films for the kinetoscopes, Edison opened the world's first motion picture studio in West Orange in 1893. Only 20 to 30 seconds long, these early movies featured a variety of subjects, from acrobats to boxers to ballet dancers. Edison also returned to his baby, the phonograph, in West Orange. While Edison had been working on electric lights, inventors Chichester Bell, a cousin of Alexander Graham Bell, and Charles Tainter had created their own improved version of the machine, which used wax cylinders rather than tinfoil for recording. Spurred by the competition, Edison developed an even better wax cylinder phonograph. Although he originally envisioned the device as a business machine for taking dictation, people were eager to purchase it for home entertainment. Edison was happy to satisfy them. Not only did he produce a variety of phonographs for home use over the next 40 years, he also made pre-recorded cylinders or records of popular tunes to play on them. In the process, he helped to create what we now call the recording industry.